The sun leaned low, bleeding its last light across the prairie, sky stretched wide and merciless. Dust rode the wind like restless ghosts, curling between the bones of a town too tired to keep its name. Boards sagged, signs clattered, and even the horses tied to posts looked half asleep, their ribs catching the glow like worn-out lantern slats. Through that dying light came the mountain man, a rider alone, shoulders bent with years of wilderness. His beard, thick and coarse, carried the color of storm clouds, and his eyes, steady, gray, unblinking, carried a silence sharper than a knife's edge. He dismounted at the saloon, not with the ease of a man returning, but the caution of one measuring his ground. He tied his horse with a nod to no one. Inside, smoke clung low, trapped between the warped rafters and the floor's stale sweat. The piano stood mute, one key forever stuck, an echo of better days. The barkeep gave the rider a glance, quick as a flinch, and then looked away. It was not the mountain man who made the air tense, but the woman seated alone in the farthest corner. Her presence wasn't loud, yet it gathered every eye and kept them wary. Shadows cut her face into halves, firelight catching only her cheekbone and the edge of her mouth. She sat straight, one hand resting on the table as though daring someone to take notice. When the mountain man's boots struck the floorboards, she raised her gaze, and it felt like two storms meeting on the horizon. "You don't want to see what's underneath," she said. Her voice carried no tremor, only a warning, shaped in a way that made the whiskey-sour air taste colder. He paused a heartbeat, not from fear, but from the weight of those words. Then he walked to her table, boots marking the boards in patient rhythm. He set his hat down, sat opposite her, and poured silence between them before speaking. "Show me everything," the mountain man said, voice low, as though it was less a challenge and more a vow. The barkeep shifted, restless. Two card players in the corner traded looks and gathered their winnings without counting. The room drained itself of witnesses until only the woman, the mountain man, and the thick smell of smoke remained. Her eyes narrowed, not with surprise, but with the slow recognition of a man who had seen enough darkness not to flinch at more. "Careful," she murmured, drawing her glass to her lips. "Curiosity in this place cuts deeper than bullets." He didn't argue. He watched. He had learned long ago that patience revealed more than pressing. She tilted her glass, and the whiskey caught firelight, flaring amber. Rumor had wrapped her name in whispers. Folks said she carried scars no doctor could mend, sins no preacher could absolve. Some claimed she'd clawed her way out of a grave. Others swore she bore a brand of the devil himself. Whatever truth lingered, it made men keep distance and women keep silence. But the mountain man wasn't made of their fears. He measured people by the stillness of their hands, by the tremor in their eyes when storms gathered. This woman, her hands stayed steady, her eyes dared the storm to break. The wind outside began to howl, pushing against the walls, rattling the loose shutters. Thunder rolled somewhere far but certain. She leaned closer, voice tightening into something more intimate, as though the storm outside was her ally. "You think you're hunting truth," she said. "But truth out here has teeth. It tears more than it frees." The mountain man let the silence stretch before answering. His gray eyes, cold and unyielding, did not soften. "Truth doesn't scare me." The words hung heavy, like a match before the strike. She studied him then, as if weighing steel, searching for cracks. A smile ghosted across her lips, half mockery, half sorrow. Men say that until they see the cost. And the cost never stays theirs alone. Lightning slit the sky, light pouring through the window's cracks. For a moment, the saloon looked like the inside of a coffin, faces pale, shadows stretching long. The mountain man rose, slow and deliberate. He tipped his hat toward her and spoke without flourish. "I'll see it," he said. Then he turned, pushing the door open to the waiting storm. She watched him leave, her jaw tightening as though against words unspoken. For all her warning, there was something in her gaze, an ember of unwilling hope, flickering despite itself. When the door swung shut, the saloon returned to its hush. The storm pressed closer, rattling the roof like drums of war. She sat alone again, her glass empty, but her hand still steady. The mountain man stepped into rain that came sudden and hard, washing dust from the street, carving streams through dirt. Thunder cracked above as if splitting the world in two. He mounted his horse, rain streaking down the leather of his coat, and rode into the dark. Behind him, the saloon windows flared once with lightning. For a fleeting breath, her silhouette stood at the glass, watching. Then the storm swallowed everything, and the prairie stretched ahead, vast, merciless, waiting. The prairie stretched black and endless, broken only by the flame of a small campfire clawing against the dark. Sparks rose into the night like scattered prayers. The mountain man crouched close, hands steady around a tin cup, the rain-soaked weight of the storm still heavy in his coat. Across from him, the woman sat in silence, firelight bending across her face, carving shadows deeper than daylight ever dared. She had followed him without word when he left the saloon, walking beside his horse as though she belonged to no roof, no town, no rest, but the land itself. Now, as the night pressed close, she finally broke the silence. "You should have left me there," she said. Her voice carried no weakness, only a flatness carved from years of holding steady against things that would have bent anyone else. "You don't know what you've asked for." The mountain man sipped slow, eyes never leaving her. "I know enough, do you?" she asked, her gaze cutting across the fire. Men think scars are stories they can read, like brands on cattle. They think if they know the mark, they know the beast. "But you—" She stopped, a faint bitterness curling her mouth. "You asked to see everything. That's a weight that doesn't fall clean." The fire cracked. He watched the flames, not her, as if the truth might rise in the smoke. "I've carried worse," he said. She laughed then, sharp and low. Not joy, not mockery, but something caught between. "That's what they all think." Her hands moved to the ties of her coat. She did not strip it off quick, but slow, deliberate, each motion weighed like a confession. Beneath the fabric, firelight revealed the first hints of what she meant. Skin etched with scars, not wild and random, but deliberate. Patterns burned into flesh, edges too clean to be accidents. The mountain man said nothing, though his jaw worked once as though grinding stone. His eyes did not flinch. "They made me something I never asked to be," she said, voice brittle with memory. "Left me half theirs, half my own. Every time I draw breath, I feel the line where I end and their work begins." Her coat slipped lower, and the marks grew worse. Deep carvings, wounds healed into designs too cruel to belong to chance. Her back bore the shape of hands branded into her skin, a mockery of ownership. The firelight turned them into crawling shadows. The mountain man finally spoke. "And yet you lived. Living isn't always the mercy you think," she whispered. Her eyes met his then, and there was no storm, no thunder, no prairie wide enough to carry the weight of what lingered in her stare. "You asked to see. Don't say I didn't warn you." He didn't answer. His silence was answer enough, the kind that carried both respect and stubbornness. She pulled her coat back over herself, fastening it tight, hiding the marks from the fire, though they burned just as real in memory. For a long while they sat, the fire collapsing into red coals, the prairie wind howling low and mournful. The mountain man's voice finally broke the quiet. "They still hunt you." Her eyes flickered, just for a breath, a raw flash of fear buried beneath years of discipline. "They don't stop. What they made, they want back. What they failed, they want buried." He nodded once, no surprise in him. "I heard their hoof beats." Her hand twitched toward the small revolver at her side. "They'll keep coming. You stand near me, you stand in their sights." The mountain man's lips pressed into the ghost of a smile, not kind, but knowing. "I've been in worse company." She studied him again, like she had in the saloon, searching for the crack, the hint of hesitation. He offered her none. The night thickened. Coyotes called somewhere far off, their yips thin and hungry. The woman shifted closer to the fire, the flicker catching her hair, painting her face with a glow too fragile for the words she carried. "You don't understand what I am," she said, voice lower now, as if the darkness itself might listen. "They broke me open. They poured things inside, things that don't belong." The mountain man stared into the coals, smoke threading his beard. His voice came slow, weighted. I've seen what men do when they want to play God. Always looks different. Always stinks the same. Her lips parted, then pressed tight again. For a heartbeat, her mask of iron slipped, showing something raw, almost desperate. And if what's inside me breaks loose? Then I'll face it, he said. The wind shifted then, carrying a sound not born of coyote or prairie. Hooves, distant, but certain. The woman's head snapped toward the dark body taut as a drawn bowstring. They're closer than I thought, she whispered. The mountain man rose, slow, deliberate, checking the iron at his hip. His shoulders straightened, the wilderness in him rising, every line of his body cut from stone. He looked at her once, steady as the horizon. You've got a choice, he said. Run or stand. She breathed hard through her nose, then pulled her revolver free, cocking it with a click that felt final. Her face set. I've run enough. The mountain man nodded just once. The hoofbeats grew louder, thunder echoing against the flat earth. Sparks leapt from the fire as the wind surged, scattering embers into the night. The woman's grip tightened. The mountain man's hand rested easy near his holster, and the prairie itself seemed to hold its breath. In that silence, the promise of violence stretched thin as glass. The fire died to coals and the darkness pressed close. The riders were coming. Dawn bled across the horizon, a thin red line that made the land look wounded. The mountain man crouched low in the tall grass, the woman beside him, her breath measured, revolver steady in her hand. The hoofbeats had stopped sometime before sunrise, but silence in the prairie never meant safety. It meant waiting. It meant the hunters had settled into their own positions, patient as wolves. The air carried the smell of iron and earth. The grass swayed in nervous whispers, and every sound sharpened into warning. The woman's jaw was tight, her eyes scanning the ridges ahead. They're close, she said, voice nearly swallowed by the wind. He nodded, eyes never leaving the horizon. Close enough to smell fear. Her glance flicked toward him. His face was carved of stone, unreadable but steady. And you? She asked. You afraid? He spat once into the dirt, slow, deliberate. I've buried too many to waste time on fear. The first shot cracked the morning, splitting silence apart. Dirt spat inches from her knee. The woman rolled instinctively, pressing herself flat. The mountain man remained crouched, unflinching, scanning the ridges until he caught the glint of metal. His revolver barked once, clean and fast. A figure tumbled from the ridge, rifle clattering down the rocks. But there were more. Shapes rose in the grass, men moving with the precision of those who had stalked prey before. Gunfire erupted, wild at first, then narrowing into rhythm. The prairie became a crucible of sound, rifles snapping, bullets slicing through stalks. The metallic tang of powder carried by the wind. The woman fought hard, firing in quick bursts, each shot measured, each breath taut with focus. Yet the strain in her face betrayed what she carried inside. Each bullet she loosed seemed pulled not just from her revolver, but from a reservoir of rage buried beneath her skin. When a man charged close, she didn't hesitate. Her shot shattered his chest, and she rose in a sudden fury, slamming him back into the grass before he could even hit the ground. The mountain man caught it in his periphery, the way her strength surged, unnatural, raw. For a moment, she seemed more beast than woman, her movements too sharp, too brutal, as though she were made of more than flesh. She drove the butt of her revolver into another attacker's skull with a force that cracked bone like dry wood. When the dust settled for a breath, she stood trembling, blood streaking her hands, her chest heaving. Her eyes burned with something that wasn't fear and wasn't victory, but a barely contained violence she didn't want to unleash fully. He said nothing, only reloaded with steady hands, his silence a choice that carried no judgment, only acknowledgement. She caught his gaze, and for a heartbeat the fire in her seemed to dim, steadied by the iron calm in his eyes. The hunters regrouped at the far ridge, their leader's voice carrying sharp commands over the wind. They weren't retreating. They were circling, pushing the fight toward the canyon where the land would trap their prey. They'll drive us in, she muttered, breath ragged. He holstered his revolver, eyes narrowing on the shifting shadows of men. Then we don't run where they want us. Another wave surged, rifles flashing. The mountain man dropped one clean, his shot cutting through the rising sun. The woman fired twice, each shot precise, then crouched low, dragging him toward a shallow depression carved by rain. Bullets hissed overhead like angry hornets. The ground shook with hooves as riders swept in, trying to box them. Dust churned, blotting the horizon. She bit down a curse, reloading with hands that didn't shake despite the blood streaking them. He crouched beside her, calm as the stone cliffs that loomed behind. "Why do you stay?" she asked suddenly between breaths, her voice sharp with something more than battle. "You saw what I am. You see what hunts me. Why not leave?" His answer came flat, without hesitation. "Because leaving don't change what you carry." Her eyes widened just slightly, a flicker of something fragile crossing her face before she turned away. Pulling the hammer back on her revolver, the riders closed in. Shots thundered, each one tearing the air tighter. The mountain man rose, firing quick, controlled, his figure outlined by the sun behind him. Dust swirled around his boots, gun smoke curling into the sky. The woman fought at his side, and though her fury flared in brutal flashes, she stayed grounded in his rhythm, their movements sinking as though the fight demanded they breathe together. One rider broke through, lunging with a knife, his horse nearly trampling them. The mountain man seized the man's wrist, twisting it until the blade clattered. The woman fired point blank into the rider's chest, his body tumbling into the dust. For a moment they stood together in the smoke, back to back, a circle of fallen enemies around them, but the ridge still crawled with shadows. The hunters weren't finished. The woman's chest heaved, her voice low. "They'll never stop." His reply came like the grind of stone. "Then neither will I." The prairie wind rose, carrying the copper scent of blood. The surviving hunters pulled back, regrouping, their leader raising a rifle high to signal. The pause stretched, a brittle thread of quiet strung between death and what came next. The woman lowered her revolver, sweat mixing with dust on her face. She turned to him, eyes fierce, but rimmed with something near despair. "You saw what I am. You saw what they made. Still you stay." He met her gaze unblinking. "I don't scare easy. And what's underneath? It ain't theirs anymore." The words landed heavy, heavier than bullets. For the first time, her shoulders eased, if only a fraction. The rage in her eyes flickered into something else, something caught between disbelief and reluctant hope. The hunter's leader shouted again, and the ridge filled with motion. Another wave would come, another storm of bullets, blood, and dust. The woman glanced once at the mountain man, her grip tightening on the revolver, her face set in grim resolve. The sun climbed higher, burning through the dust, casting long shadows across the grass. The land itself seemed to lean into the coming clash, waiting. And then the riders charged, hooves drumming the earth like war drums, dust rising to swallow the sky. The canyon walls rose like jagged teeth, red stone catching the harsh light of noon. Dust hung in the air, thick as smoke, each breath burning the throat. The mountain man stood with his back to the woman, both of them framed by the narrowing gorge, their shadows stretched long against the earth. Before them, the riders gathered in a wide arc, rifles raised, faces grim beneath the brims of their hats. At their center sat the leader, tall in the saddle, a scar bisecting his jaw, his stare fixed on the woman with the cold hunger of a man reclaiming what he believed his. "You can't win here," the woman murmured, voice low, bitter, but not hopeless. "They've boxed us in." "It's what they wanted." The mountain man's hand hovered near his revolver, steady as ever. "Then we fight where we stand." The leader urged his horse forward, the sound of hooves echoing like drums against the stone. His voice carried rough and sharp. "You were meant to come back. What's in you belongs to us. That man beside you, he's just another body for the dirt." The woman's jaw tightened. Her hand clenched around her revolver, but her whole body trembled with something deeper than rage, an old chain pulling tight. She looked at the mountain man, her eyes heavy with the weight of everything she had shown him. "If you see the rest, you won't come back from it." His reply was soft but unyielding. "Then I'll see it." The riders advanced. Rifles lifted, sunlight glinting off steel. The woman's breath hitched, a sound almost too small to hear. Then she stepped forward, and for the first time she didn't hide what lived beneath her skin. The firelight scars she had shown him before were only fragments. Now, with her coat flung aside, the full horror came into view. Her arms and shoulders bore patterns of branded flesh, lines carved into sigils, her veins running dark where something unnatural pulsed. Her back arched as if the marks themselves breathed, what they had forced into her, what they had hoped to command, now surged like a storm unchained. The riders faltered. Even their leader's horse shied, nostrils flaring. The mountain man did not move, did not recoil. His gaze stayed steady, though the world around them shifted with the weight of her revelation. She looked monstrous, yes, but also like something greater than the men who had made her, a creation twisted yet defiantly her own. Then the first shot broke. Chaos ignited. The mountain man drew, firing with clean precision. Each shot dropped a rider, the crack of his revolver echoing off stone. The woman moved with a fury that belonged to no ordinary flesh, strength surging in every motion, her revolver bucking like thunder in her hands, her strikes shattering bone when men dared close. The canyon became a graveyard. Dust rose, gunsmoke clung, men screamed as they fell. She and the mountain man fought back to back, the rhythm of their survival binding them tighter than words. His calm steadied her frenzy, her fury shielded his flesh. Together they carved through the wave, but the leader pressed on, his eyes fixed only on her. He dismounted, rifle discarded, drawing a long knife that gleamed like a fang. He stalked forward, ignoring the bodies littering the dirt, every step a promise of the claim he meant to take. The woman froze when she saw him, breath choking in her chest. Memories surged. Chains, branding irons, nights of screams pressed into her bones. Her revolver wavered. The mountain man stepped forward, shielding her. The leader sneered. "You think you can keep her from me? She is what we made. What's underneath is ours!" The woman's hand rose, trembling, as though caught between fighting and surrendering. The mountain man glanced back at her, his voice rough but steady. "Don't let them own what you carry. Let it be yours!" The words struck like iron to flint. Her trembling stilled. Her grip tightened. She stepped past him, eyes locked on the leader, and in that moment she was not prey, not broken. She was fire given form. The leader lunged. She met him head-on, the two colliding in a blur of dust and violence. His knife slashed, carving her arm, but she didn't falter. She drove her revolver beneath his ribs, fired once, then again, the sound deafening against stone. He staggered, choking blood, his knife clattering useless to the dirt. She stood over him, chest heaving, revolver shaking in her grip. His eyes burned with dying malice. "You'll never be free of us," he rasped, her hand steadied. "I already am." The last shot ended him. Silence followed, broken only by the slow settling of dust. The surviving riders fled, scattering like crows before a storm. The canyon, moments ago alive with battle, now lay heavy with bodies and echoes. The woman lowered her revolver, blood dripping from her arm, her face caught between exhaustion and release. She turned to the mountain man, eyes searching. "You saw it all," she said. Her voice cracked, brittle as glass. "Do you regret it?" He holstered his revolver, expression unchanged, carved from the same granite as the cliffs. No. For the first time, she let herself exhale, the weight of years loosening if only by a breath. Rain began to fall, sudden and hard, washing blood into the canyon's veins. The drops streaked their faces, cleansing nothing yet, carrying the promise of something beyond survival. They stood together in the downpour, scarred, silent, alive. The woman's shoulders eased, her eyes lifting to the sky. The mountain man mounted his horse, then extended a hand down to her. She hesitated only a moment before taking it, pulling herself into the saddle behind him. The storm raged above, but they rode forward, leaving the canyon of death behind. The horizon stretched wide, endless waiting. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The battle had not erased the past, but it had given it shape, a truth shared between them. a bond forged in blood and fire. And as the rain blurred the land into shifting silhouettes, the mountain man's words echoed in her memory. Let it be yours. For the first time, she believed it might be.